The last rays of sunlight were slipping away when Ethan realized his father wasn't coming back. They had arrived at the Raven Pines campground that afternoon, just the two of them, like old times. His dad had promised it would be a weekend of fishing, stars and quiet. He even smiled when he said it, though his eyes looked tired in a way Ethan hadn't seen before. "Just stay by the tent," his father had said after dinner. "I'm going to grab something I left in the truck." That was 3 hours ago. Now the forest had swallowed the world. Shadows stretched like black roots, and the trees whispered in the kind of wind that doesn't move leaves but carries voices. At first, Ethan called out. Then he screamed. Then he stopped, because something had answered. The night deepened, thick and heavy like the air was holding its breath. The only light came from the dying fire, a dull orange glow that painted the inside of the tent with trembling shadows. Ethan clutched his flashlight, the beam trembling over the flap of the tent. "Dad," he whispered again, though the word came out cracked. Something moved outside and slow, dragging steps through the leaves. Too heavy to be wind, too steady to be an animal. He held his breath. The footsteps stopped right behind the tent. A silence followed, so total that he could hear his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Then a whisper, soft, male, familiar. "Ethan, come help me." His father's voice. Ethan froze. He wanted to unzip the tent and run into his dad's arms, but something in that voice, and something not quite right, kept him still. It was too low, too close, and when it spoke again, the sound came from the ground, not from standing height. "Ethan, please, I fell." He aimed the flashlight toward the zipper, but the battery flickered, dimming. He hesitated, then shone it through the thin nylon wall instead. What he saw made his stomach twist. A handprint pressed into the outside of the tent. Large, wet, dragging down the fabric slowly, leaving a streak of dark liquid. And another. And another. Like something was crawling around him. Ethan didn't move until the handprint stopped. Then he heard it again. The same voice, but now from behind him, on the other side of the tent. "Ethan, don't make me come in there," he bolted. Out of the tent, through the trees, the flashlight bouncing like a dying star in his shaking hand. He didn't look back. He couldn't. Not when he heard the rustle of fabric tearing and something dragging itself out of the tent behind him. He ran until the air burned in his chest, until the beam hit the dirt road that led back toward the parking area. The campsite was gone behind a wall of trees. He couldn't even see the glow of the fire anymore. The night was too silent. No crickets. No owls, just his own breathing, and faintly, far off, a laugh that sounded like his father's, but stretched, distorted, broken. He stumbled into the small wooden shack that served as the campground's office. It was empty, lights off, the smell of mildew and cold coffee in the air. He slammed the door, locked it, and crouched behind the counter. The radio on the desk crackled to life, static. Then a voice. "Than. Ethan, you left me." He stared at the radio. His throat dry, the voice laughed softly. "You always leave the fire burning too long." That was something his father used to say. When Ethan was small and scared of the dark, he unplugged the radio, but it kept talking. No power, still whispering, still calling. He grabbed it and hurled it against the wall, and it shattered, and for a moment silence returned. Then from the window, a reflection. His father, standing just outside, smiling, eyes black as wet soil. When he turned around, the door creaked open, slowly, carefully, like the thing outside didn't want to startle him, just remind him that escape was pointless. He ducked under the counter, holding his breath again. The floorboards groaned. The smell hit him, rot, pine, and something metallic. A hand reached down, fingers brushing the counter edge. "Ethan," the voice said, now warped, doubling over itself like an echo inside a well. "Who shouldn't have run?" He didn't answer. The thing crouched, and he saw its face for the first time, or rather what was left of it. His father's features, but stretched thin, like they'd been pulled onto something else. The eyes were too wide, the jaw unhinged, and every time it spoke, its skin rippled. You said you'd stay. It was smiling, but there was no warmth. Only hunger, loneliness, and an awful patience. He'd bolted for the window, smashing through the glass. The shards cut deep, but he didn't stop running. Not when he felt the cold night air fill with that choking laughter again. He didn't look back. Not even when it started calling again, softer this time, Ethan. Please don't leave me alone. Dawn hours later, the forest broke open into the edge of a road. He collapsed onto the gravel, shivering, bloodied and sobbing. Headlights appeared, a ranger truck. The man jumped out, rushing toward him. Kid, are you okay? Where's your dad? Ethan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Just a shaking hand pointing back toward the trees. The ranger frowned. Son, this campsite's been closed for years. Ethan looked up, confused. But we came yesterday. My dad, there's no one here, the ranger said, his voice low. No one's camped there since the accident. The words hung heavy in the cold morning air. What accident? Ethan asked, barely breathing. The ranger sighed. A man and his boy went missing. Years ago. They found the father's body by the lake. But never the boy. Ethan's throat tightened, but I'm right here. The ranger looked at him, really looked, and stepped back, his face draining of color. Ethan followed his gaze to the truck's side mirror. There was no reflection, only the forest behind him. And far in the distance, the soft crackle of a campfire. That morning, the ranger called for backup. But by the time they arrived, the road was empty. No boy, no footprints. Only a single tent standing in the clearing, unzipped. Burned along the edges, inside lay a child's flashlight, its beam flickering weakly against the canvas. From deep within the woods, faintly carried on the wind, came a voice. Dad, you can come back now.